If not now, when? If not you, who? The fight for gender equality is not just about women standing up for women. It's about everyone standing up for everyone. Imagine waking up every day knowing your voice might be dismissed simply because of your gender. Imagine being told to man up when you feel vulnerable, or to act like a lady when you show ambition. Now imagine a world where no one hears that ever again. That world isn't a dream, it's a possibility, and it begins with each of us. I stand here today not just to speak to women about women's rights. I am here to speak to men about their rights, their roles, and their responsibility in creating a just and equal society. Because gender equality is not just a women's issue, it's a human rights issue, and one that we will never solve until everyone is part of the conversation. For generations, we've defined gender in narrow, suffocating boxes. We've told boys not to cry and girls not to lead. We've made strength a male trait and empathy a female one, and we've all suffered because of it. HeForShe is not just a campaign, it is a call to courage, to every man who has questioned injustice but remained silent, to every woman who has felt the need to apologize for her power, to every young person who doesn't yet see their place in this conversation. You are needed now more than ever. When men support gender equality, they don't lose power. They help create a world where power is shared and respected. When women are empowered, families are stronger, workplaces are more productive, and societies are more just. We need men to speak up in boardrooms, in locker rooms, in classrooms. We need allies, not just in words, but in actions. And most of all, we need understanding, because empathy, not blame, builds bridges. Gender equality is not just a women's issue. It's a human issue that touches the very fabric of our lives, our relationships, our communities, and the systems we depend on every day. For too long, conversations about gender have been viewed as something that concerns only women and girls, as if equality were a favor extended rather than a right upheld. But when we view it through the lens of human rights, we begin to see the true scale of its impact. Inequality affects how we grow up, how we work, how we love, how we raise our children, and how we grow old. It is woven into economic systems that pay women less for the same work, into cultures that shame men for being vulnerable, and into education systems that teach girls to be quiet and boys to be bold. It is present in laws that deny basic rights, in social norms that silence victims, and in workplaces that reward dominance instead of collaboration. When women are denied opportunities to lead, innovate, and participate fully, the entire world misses out on their potential. Economies stagnate, communities suffer, progress slows. But what's often overlooked is how these same systems that disadvantage women also hurt men. Men are often pressured to conform to rigid ideals of masculinity, to suppress emotion, avoid asking for help, or shoulder burdens alone. These expectations contribute to mental health crises, strained relationships, and even increased violence. Gender inequality fosters environments where both men and women are not truly free to express themselves fully, to choose careers and lifestyles based on passion rather than pressure, and to build mutual respect and empathy in their personal and professional lives. Equality is about balance. It's about rewriting rules that were never written with fairness in mind. It's about recognizing that true progress cannot be achieved in a vacuum, and that we all, regardless of gender, have a stake in a world that values dignity, justice, and opportunity for every human being. When one group is held back, we all are. And when one group rises, we all rise. The conversation about gender must be opened up, made more inclusive, and grounded in the understanding that the liberation of one is intertwined with the liberation of all. This is not charity. This is not division. This is about unity, dignity, and the fundamental belief that every person deserves to live without limitation based on their gender. HeForShe calls for men to be active allies, not passive supporters or distant observers, but fully engaged participants in the movement for gender equality. It challenges long-standing narratives that have positioned gender advocacy as a space exclusively reserved for women, and instead opens the door for men to step into the conversation with purpose and accountability. This call is not about blame, it's about responsibility. It's about recognizing that silence, even if unintentional, can be a form of complicity. In a world where systems of privilege and power are often invisible to those who benefit from them, being an ally means choosing to see what may be uncomfortable and acting on what is right. It means speaking up when women's voices are dismissed in meetings, challenging sexist jokes among friends, advocating for parental leave policies that benefit all parents, and listening, truly listening, to the lived experiences of those whose realities are different from your own. It asks men to use their platforms, however large or small, to amplify the fight for fairness, and to acknowledge that privilege can be transformed into progress when used ethically and intentionally. Allyship is not about taking center stage or becoming a savior. It is about standing beside women, behind them when needed, and in front of harmful systems when required. It involves a willingness to be vulnerable, to unlearn harmful conditioning, to face uncomfortable truths, and to constantly reflect on one's own actions and attitudes. It is a lifelong commitment, not a momentary gesture, grounded in humility, empathy, and a belief in shared humanity. Through HeForShe, men are invited to become not just witnesses to change, but co-creators of a world where respect, equity, and dignity are non-negotiable foundations of every human interaction. Stereotypes harm all genders in ways that are often deeply embedded and tragically overlooked. From an early age, individuals are conditioned to fit into narrowly defined boxes labeled with expectations based solely on gender, limiting not only personal growth but also collective potential. Girls are often taught to be agreeable, delicate, and deferential, praised for their beauty before their intelligence, and encouraged to prioritize appearance and empathy over ambition and strength. Boys, on the other hand, are frequently instructed to suppress emotion, avoid vulnerability, and equate their worth with dominance, success, or physical strength. These stereotypes are not benign. They shape identities, choices, and futures. They dictate who should lead and who should follow, who should nurture and who should provide, who should express and who should endure in silence. And the consequences run deep. They manifest in mental health crises, workplace inequalities, relationship breakdowns, and institutionalized discrimination. When a woman is told she is too emotional to lead, or a man is told that real men don't cry, it reinforces a cycle that punishes authenticity and rewards conformity. These societal narratives rob individuals of the freedom to explore the full spectrum of their personality, dreams, and capabilities. They influence how we parent our children, how we hire our employees, how we teach in our classrooms, and how we legislate in our governments. For women, stereotypes often act as ceilings, caging ambition and silencing agency. For men, they act as shackles, suppressing emotional expression and isolating them from meaningful connection. These roles become expectations, and expectations become norms that no one remembers choosing, yet everyone feels pressured to fulfill. Even those who try to break free often find themselves judged, misunderstood, or ostracized, simply for choosing to be more than what society expects based on gender alone. Empathy over blame is not just a principle. It is a shift in mindset that determines whether conversations about gender equality create bridges or deepen divides. Blame, while often rooted in valid frustration and historical pain, can easily become a barrier that shuts people out rather than drawing them in. It creates defensiveness, shame, and guilt, emotions that often lead to withdrawal instead of action. Empathy, on the other hand, invites people to step closer, to understand before they react, and to see the world through someone else's eyes. It asks us to pause before judging and to listen not for the sake of responding, but for the sake of truly comprehending another's reality. When we lead with empathy, we acknowledge that change is complex, that learning is ongoing, and that progress requires patience as much as passion. It allows room for honest mistakes, for uncomfortable questions, and for growth that isn't always linear. In the context of gender equality, empathy means recognizing that while one group may be more privileged, most people have been conditioned by the same systems that teach men to fear softness and women to shrink their power. It means seeing that some men are not resisting equality out of malice, but out of confusion or fear of losing identity, and that shaming them may only push them further away from the conversation. It means embracing the idea that people are not our enemies. Ignorance, apathy, and indifference are. Empathy doesn't excuse injustice, but it makes space for dialogue that can lead to transformation. It fosters allyship, not out of obligation, but out of understanding, and replaces isolation with connection, resistance with reflection, and conflict with cooperation. Inclusion starts with action, not perfection, because waiting to be flawless before showing up only delays progress and silences the very voices that need to be heard. Too often, people hold back from engaging in conversations about gender equality or any form of justice because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing, of being criticized, of not having the perfect vocabulary or a complete understanding of all the issues. But perfection is not a prerequisite for participation. What matters more is the willingness to begin, to care, and to learn. Inclusion is built not by those who claim expertise, but by those who choose to listen, to ask questions, to show up, and to try. It's about recognizing our blind spots and choosing to illuminate them, not out of guilt, but out of a genuine desire to grow. It's about making space at the table even when you're not sure of the right seating arrangement. True inclusion doesn't require you to have a spotless record or to have lived the experience of every marginalized group. It requires you to care enough to take that first step, even if it's messy. Every conversation, every small correction, every time someone calls out injustice or stands beside someone who feels alone, those are the actions that build inclusive spaces. Perfection is often a mask for fear and a way to avoid accountability, while action, imperfect, evolving, vulnerable action, is the heartbeat of any real movement. Inclusion thrives where people are brave enough to admit what they don't know, open enough to change their minds, and committed enough to keep showing up even when it's uncomfortable. It is not a checklist or a destination, but a series of continuous choices made every day in classrooms, offices, homes, and public spaces where people decide that fairness and representation matter more than ego or image. Let me know if you'd like this tailored for a specific setting like a school, corporate event, or advocacy campaign. Together is the only way forward, because every meaningful movement toward justice, equity, and lasting change has always been built on collective strength, not isolated effort. When we speak of gender equality, we cannot speak in silos. This is not a battle of women against men, or one group pushing another aside to claim space. It is a shared endeavor, one that recognizes that progress for one is progress for all. The challenges we face are too deeply rooted, too systemically ingrained, to be dismantled by a single voice or perspective. We need the wisdom that comes from diverse experiences, the power that comes from standing shoulder to shoulder, and the compassion that grows when we truly see each other not as opponents, but as allies. Moving forward together means embracing discomfort, listening more than we speak, and honoring each other's stories, even when they expose truths we may not be ready to hear. It means creating partnerships that are not performative, but purposeful, rooted in mutual respect, and driven by a shared vision for a more just and inclusive world. Together does not mean uniformity. It means unity in intention, strength in difference, and purpose in collaboration. It means recognizing that equality cannot be fully realized until every individual, regardless of gender, race, orientation, background, or ability, is given the dignity of belonging. It calls for solidarity that goes beyond sympathy. Solidarity that shows up in the laws we shape, the cultures we cultivate, the systems we reform, and the everyday interactions we choose to make more just and humane. Division slows us, weakens us, and isolates us, but together we become a force that not only resists the status quo, but redefines what is possible.